Welcome to this lesson where we're going to take a look at developing the events page. So first of all, I want to bring your attention back to the Full Calendar plugin, which is a free plugin for jQuery, and it allows you to display event data to the user, of course. And so what we can do with the event data is actually pull that in from a JSON file. So this is going to be a good learning curve for us to understand how we detach the front end from the back end and keep them separated. That way we become better front end developers. Also, what's really great about this script is the fact that it has so much customization to it. So I can change the button layout at the top. I can just change so much. And also we have the views. So you have the month view, which is fine for the desktop and perhaps a few tablet devices. But however, when tablets start to go a little bit small, we can go into the week view. And then obviously for the smartphone, we can go into the day view, making this very extensible and greatly customizable. So what I want to do now is go ahead and take a look at the design inside of Photoshop. So it should be immediately apparent to you that this is the 2-column layout, bar from a few customizations, which we're going to have to go over and make sure that we still keep the functionality of the 2-column layout. But also what's important is seeing the structure. So right now you can see in the left-hand column we have the search. Again, we won't be providing the functionality for the search, but it will certainly style that up in the front end. And also what we have is anchors that effectively link to events, and they will go off to their particular event page. Also what we have right here is the page mostly consists of the full calendar. So the full calendar is pretty much the entire events page where we can click and drag events, we can change the length of an event, and so on and so forth. All we really need to do is style it up. But that can be a little bit of a tricky task because the calendar is rendered on the fly. So what that means is I don't actually know what the DOM structure is until it's actually exported out from JavaScript and then placed into the DOM. So we're going to need to come up with some creative techniques in order to find out how the DOM is structured. And again, it's actually very easy to do, but if you don't know, this will be a great insight for you. So now what I want to do is take a look at developing this page inside of the HTML. So first of all, we have the events.php file open, and also we've got that open in the browser. We have the events.scss file being watched by the terminal. And then also we have the import.scss file, and with this SCSS file you'll notice now that I moved the 2-column layout styles into the actual import.scss. So now I know that these are global styles that apply to more than one page. Then also we have the script JavaScript file, and of course that is going to be needed when we actually apply our calendar. So what I want to do right now is go ahead and take a look at the events.php, and with the HTML tag I'm just going to add the ID attribute, and we're going to say events. That way I can target that ID and know that I'm only going to affect this page. Then also, what I want to do is below the header, we need to, again, set up our 2-column layout. So what I'm going to do is put in a div with the ID of col2 with a capital T. And so that is the table, and then we have the 2 child divs, which are going to act like table cells. Now, the first div is going to have an ID, and that is going to be menu_side. Then also inside of there, what we want is the anchor, don't forget. Now this anchor is only going to show when we are on the mobile version of the site, and then of course it will open up another div and toggle it open and closed for the menu items. So what I'm going to do is give this the ID of side_open, and again it's a link to nowhere. So then inside of there we're going to have the span, and inside of there I'm just going to have the semicolon. So that's just going to be the icon, and then we need the button text. So that's going to be events. So this anchor is going to toggle open and close the div with the ID of sub_menu. So inside of there is where all of our contents of our side menu right here is going to exist. So what we need to do first of all is put in a span, and that's just going to have a hash inside of there, which is going to be that icon. But also there is an invisible input right there. So we want to put an input inside of here. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. Then also what we need to do is take a look at putting in the anchors right here. So what I'm going to do is create an anchor, and we're not going to link anywhere specifically, we just want to create this for obviously designing up the button and so forth. And inside of there we want the strong tag. So the strong tag is obviously going to be the title, and it's also going to be the date as well that it's going to encompass. So let's go ahead and just simply copy that out and then paste that in. And then we have the normal text below it. So let's go ahead and copy that out and paste that in. And then what I can do is simply copy that just like so. So now we have 5 anchors all together, and I can just save this now. And so what we can do is quickly hit refresh. So you'll notice now that this div right here is acting like a table cell, and because the other div that's acting like a table cell has no content, technically it has no mass. So if you just put some text in there, you'll notice that now they split. But the only other thing that we need to think about is obviously the width of this div element, the color of the div element, and so on and so forth. So what I want to do is then I want to take a look at styling that sidebar and just getting the general styles in place, and then we can look at putting in the calendar, and then once we put the calendar in there we can then start to style that up. So let's go ahead and take a look at the events.scss file. So the first thing I want to do is target the ID events, and so that is on the HTML tag, and then I want to target the body element that's inside of there. So what I want to do is actually set the height, because if I actually set the height to 1000 pixels right now, you'll see what I'm talking about when I save that and hit refresh. You'll notice that we can obviously select the anchors in the header, but we can no longer select these anchors right here. And the reason being is because the body is now on a higher Z index, it's on a higher order of the stack, and so what that actually means is we can no longer select anything behind the stack. So of course what we need to do is make sure that we limit the height of the body to 50 pixels, and that way it's only going to cover the actual height of the header, which is absolutely fine. So if I hit refresh now, you'll notice that we can still select those anchors, and we can also still select these anchors and inputs and so forth and so on. So that's why I've limited the body's actual height. But now what I want to do is focus my attention on this left hand side column, because obviously it's the wrong color and also it's the wrong size as well. So what I need to do first of all is target the ID events, and then I need to target the ID menu underscore side, which is the div that is wrapping around all of the content on the left hand side of the page. So what I need to do now is take a look at styling that up. So first of all I want to limit the width to 230 pixels, and then also I want to change the background color to be cream, just like so. Now go ahead and save that and hit refresh. So that's working fine, but now you'll notice that when we shrink this down, you'll see that it's still keeping that width of 230 pixels. So what we need to do is take a look at the import.scss file. So this file again contains all of the global styles, and of course that involves our 2-column layout. Now what we need to do is take a look at our media query. So right here what we're doing is again displaying that link, and then obviously styling that link up, which is that link right there, side underscore open, and of course that's going to open and close our submenu. But all that code has been provided and that link works just fine, as you can see right here. That's absolutely fine. But now what we need to do is obviously make sure that this width is going to 100%. So let's flick back to that file, and right here you can see that it's targeting col2 and menu side. Now with the events.scss file you'll see that we're targeting the events ID. So what's happening is this selector is overriding this selector right here. So that's effectively breaking our layout styles. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a comma right there, and we're going to have another selector, and again we're going to be targeting the same thing just like so. But what we've got to do is play top trump. So what I'm going to do is say HTML right here. So what this is going to do is it's going to target the HTML tag with the ID events, and then it's going to target the element inside of there with the ID of menu underscore side. And that way what will happen is this selector now will override this selector. Because again, this isn't specifying what type of element there is. So with the other selector, I am specifying that this must be a HTML element, and so that will override this selector. So once I've gone ahead and done that, what you need to do is make sure that you save the events.scss, otherwise the import.scss styles simply won't be applied. So what I can do now is save that and hit refresh. And now you'll notice that it does indeed go to 100%. And then of course we have the toggling going off. So what I'm going to do is push it back out again, so we go back to the desktop version so we can see everything. And the next thing I want to do is take a look at styling this span right here, which is supposed to be our search icon. And then also we have the input that goes behind the search icon, and I'll explain this in just a second. But what I want to do now is take a look at targeting the ID events, which is the HTML element. Then I'm going to look at the sub underscore menu. And then I'm going to take a look inside of there for a span. And you can be very specific. You could say, well, this span must be a direct child and so on and so forth. Or you could say first hyphen child. That's entirely up to you. But since this is actually going to be the only span here, I don't have to worry about that. So now what I can do is first of all set the position as absolute. So don't forget that the input is going to go behind the span. And then of course we can style up the input in such a way that the text doesn't go underneath the actual span. Again, we'll elaborate later on, but right now I want to say position absolute because I want elements to go underneath it. And once I've done that, what I can do then is take a look at the margin left. So what I'm doing right here is I'm just pushing this actual icon away from the left edge. Then also what I want to do is take a look at the line height. So I'm going to make the line height 59 pixels. Then also what we have is the font family. So obviously that's going to be Liger because we want those web symbols. And then also we have the font size. So if I set the font size to be something like 20 pixels, that should do the trick. And again, you can play around with these values in settings. I'm just going to save that now and hit refresh. So now you'll notice that the input sort of shoved across and none of the elements are sort of respecting its boundaries. It's just basically stuck there, which is what I want. But now obviously we need to style that input. So what I need to do is take a look at targeting that ID events, then target the sub underscore menu, and then target the input that's nested inside of there. So please join me in the next lesson where we'll continue on developing the events page.